All right, looks like we're live. Looks pretty good. I'll give everybody a few seconds as we get going. I got a good one for you. I got a couple of stories for you, and I've also taken the liberty of throwing up some great examples, some PDFs. So get ready for that. While you're joining here, I'm gonna pop up a story that I was told as a younger person. I must have been in my 20s when I first heard this, and it comes across as different titles. I've heard it as, and I'm reading this one. I've heard it as the two wolves story, the wolves within. Which one do you feed? Grandfather tells the tale of two wolves. Whatever the story, you may have heard this one, but here it goes. I'm going to start off with this. The story features two characters, a grandfather and his grandson. The grandfather explains to his grandson that there are two wolves fighting within him, which is an image that serves as a metaphor for the man's inner sense of conflict, just so you know. The conversation between the two people go like this. I have a fight going on in me, the old man said. It's taking place between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, faults, pride, superiority, and ego. See, that's why I didn't memorize this. I'm reading it to you because I wouldn't have remembered that part. The grandfather looked at the grandson and went on. The other embodies positive emotions. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. Both wolves are fighting to the death. The same fight is going on inside you and every other person too. That's what he says to the grandson. The grandson took a moment to reflect on this and finally looked up at the grandfather and asked, "Oh, which wolf will win?" And the old Cherokee gave a simple reply and said, "The one you feed." And so that's the story today. I wanted to start off with that just so you have a clear understanding of what I'm going to talk about, because whatever you focus on expands. And oftentimes we're focusing on things that are problems of ours because that's the thing that's in front of us, right? And I want to challenge you today to start focusing on priorities, those things that'll lift you past your current problems, those things that'll elevate you to where you want to go, because we all have a set of goals, but a lot of us never achieve them because we just never break them down into actionable steps, right? So I see a few people here. Ali, what's up from Somalia? Lauren, what's up from Dallas? I love Dallas. And Paige, you're in Frisco, Texas. I didn't know that. That's cool. Anyway, nice to have you in here. And I want to start off by really outlining this for you, because we often figure, well, where do we start when it comes to our priorities and our actions? Where do we start when it comes to identifying what's most important to us? And I want to tell you that it's an actual process that I've taken the liberty to create here for you so that you have a better understanding of where to start. And the idea behind this whole thing started for me with visualization. And visualization allowed me to say, well, let's take it a little further. What's most important to me? So when I would close my eyes, I'd be like, okay, let's figure this out. And I've done this before, this part, but it's crucial to identifying those priorities. And when I'm visualizing, there are really three steps I need to go over, and that's the self, family, and business. And I circulate through those things in my head. Well, what does business look like? What does self look like when I'm thinking about this? Gabawar, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Very kind of you. And so when I'm thinking, well, what about self? What does self mean, right? Spiritual, physical, mental, emotional. right? If you think of the story back to the two wolves, which one are you feeding? Do you even take time to identify what's important to you when it comes to the self? And that's why I've broken it down into that. And family. It can be spouse, it can be friends, it could be siblings, it can be parents, grandparents, it could be kids. It could be whatever you want it to be when it comes to that whole family word. Right? But do we put any emphasis on growing those relationships that are supposed to be important to us? And then lastly is business. It could come as your profession, your job or a startup or a side hustle, whatever that is. But the idea is to identify these and then place them into something so that they're clear for you. And so I created this sheet for you, and I'll share this with you in the Achievers community. If you're not in there, jump in. It's free, and we'll put it up at the top. Let me pop this open because I have the actual sheet that I use and an example that I created for you. So I'm going to see if I can share this right now with you. I'm going to open this up and let me know if you're able to see this. I see it. Perfect. All right. So this is the actual sheet that I use, and I go through it at the end of every month, and it's part of the process, right? The priorities for the month, I put the month there, and I have the idea in this little section that you have that little drop down. It looks like a little drop down arrow that's blue and then white in the middle. That's where I put the heading. Like, what's the priority? And I have an example too, so I'll share that with you. But first, this is the sheet that we use. What's up, Pedro from Portugal? What's up, Jacqueline? I see you. This is the idea behind it. Be able to identify what your priorities are based on what I told you, right? Self, family, business, and then write down the actionable steps. Now, I'm going to scroll down here to show you exactly what I have so that you're able to see some examples. I just threw up there. I wrote these out earlier today so you could see them, but I put one is connect with spouse. Next is read 2 books in a month. The other one's social media for your business because you want to focus on social for your business. And the other one is work out more. And the last one is evening routine. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so we can see that clear. And so, Jacqueline, you're from Boston. I love Boston. I love it. All right, Evelyn, nice to see you on here as well. And Alex, I see it. So here, the priorities are important now because for the month, I'm able to break them down and say, this is what I'm going to focus on for this month. We don't ever take the time to identify what our priorities are. And then we live the week, the day, and the month. We live it by reacting. And that's the challenge because crap's always going to happen to you in your life. And then once you're taken away from what you thought you were going to do today, you forget to go back to what's most important, right? And this, to me, these are examples, right? But these are examples of what people should be writing in. So let's take a look at spouse, all right? I put in my priority for the month is going to be connect with my spouse. The number one thing I'm going to do, action step here, is I'm going to add it to the calendar. Because if it doesn't exist on my schedule, it doesn't exist at all. It's never going to happen. What's up, Joe? Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And Lisa from Long Island, New York. I love New York. Next, be specific. What the hell are you going to do when you put this on your schedule? Is it just going to be on your schedule and it's going to say connect with my spouse? What does that mean? You need to have clarity. Is it going to be read a book? Is it going to be go walking? Is it going to be watch a show? Is it going to be just talk through coffee? What is it going to be? Be specific. And then this one right here, transition correctly. This to me is extremely important when it comes to anything, but this specifically for the spouse. When you're done with work and you're transitioning over to be with, in this case, your spouse, you have to mentally transition to it and say, all right, I'm done with what I was doing. Now I need to be present for this person. And this is who I need to be at the moment. I'm not going to worry about everything else. This is what I need to do now. And I mean, we can apply that to everything, right? You're going to show up to work out. You're going to show up to a meeting. You're going to show up to do whatever it is you're going to do. Take the time to fully transition to be present into doing what you're going to do, right? What's up, Baba? How you doing, buddy? So next, we're going to do read 2 books in a month. Number 1, action step, block the time. What time is that going to be? Are you a morning reader, middle of the day reader, evening reader? When? Right? I love reading in the evening. So for me, I'd block that time in the evening. Next, well, what book are you going to read? It's not just going to say read a book. Be very specific, because clarity gives you that extra step to actually accomplish this, right? So what book is it going to be? Next, divide pages needed. So you want to read 2 books in a month? Well, let's find these books. Now that you know the titles of the book, divide it and figure out, well, how many pages am I going to need to read today to finish this book in 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, right? Now you start getting better. And so we start doing this and it becomes a little clearer, right, as we start identifying these. But this itself is a priority sheet, right? There are 2 parts to this. This is a priority sheet. I'm going to stop sharing this with you because there's another part to this, right? This is only part 1 after you've written these all out. And I keep these always on my computer. I have a printed out copy of everything that I need to prioritize and focus on, just in case I forget, because stuff happens throughout the day. I then take it an extra step further. The things that are going to be my priorities for the month, I create a blueprint out of it. And then I'll show you exactly what this blueprint looks like. But I'm really committed to this, and it's a process. And there was something I read this morning that I wasn't going to read to you, but it made an impact in the process. And I think it's important to just read. It's a little excerpt from a book. And I brought this up last time, the Daily Stoic. Let me see if I can focus it in. Come on, focus. There it is. The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. Pick it up. It's a really good book, just like daily devotionals based on philosophers of our past, Greek philosophers. But this one, it says, elite athletes in collegiate and professional sports increasingly follow a philosophy known as the process. All right, so process in parentheses, in quotations. It's a philosophy created by University of Alabama coach Nick Saban. And it says the process in your life is assembling the right actions in the right order, one right after another, so you leave the process to work on its own when you work on it. And what it allows you to do is to stop focusing on all of the problems that you have and to start looking at these goals as these unsurmountable things that you'll never accomplish, and break it down into these action steps that you're creating, right? So let's just tackle that single one about the spouse, right? When we're looking at the one with the spouse, and I'll bring it back up here, but the spouse one was, look, I'm going to connect with my spouse. I'm going to add this to my calendar. That's step 1. I'm going to be very specific as to what we're going to do that's on my calendar for that day. Maybe I'll outline it for the week, or 2 times out of the week, or 3 times, however many times. But be very specific as to what I'm going to do at that time. And next is, I'm going to remember to transition correctly so I'm fully present. Now, once you're there, there's another part to this, and that's what I call the blueprint, right? This is where I say, trust the process. I'm going to share my screen here once again. And this I came up with a few years back. Garrett, I love that book, right? So good, man. Let me share it. All right, here we go. I'm going to see if you guys can see my screen. Good. You can. I call this the blueprint. And Tanya, the book that I popped up is called The Daily Stoic, and it's by Ryan Holiday. You can pick it up on Amazon. It's a great book. It's a daily devotional. All right, so I created this a few years back specifically for me, and then I realized that the process that I had created, we could use for all the businesses that I help out, all the consulting that I do. And I said, well, let's break this down and help people, right? That's in essence what I end up doing. I fix something that that is a problem in my life or a challenge, and then I turn it around and see how I can use it for everybody else. Same way is this. So let me zoom in a little bit here so I can explain to you what this is. And now we're going to take in the idea behind this and say, all right, I've chosen one of my priorities, and I do this with all of the priorities for the month. This way, I understand what the next steps are. I understand why it's important to me, what problem I'm solving, and the action steps that we need to take on a daily basis or a weekly basis, depending on the actual priority. All right, the first thing I want to know is, well, let's check this off. Is this going to be a physical one, intellectual, spiritual, business, parental, social, financial, emotional, marital? In this case, it's marital, right? We're focusing on the spouse one. It could be business, whatever. So now my priority, I'm going to have something that's very specific, timely, and actionable, almost like a SMART goal, if you've heard of what SMART goals are, right? So now I'm going to be very specific and say, well, I do want to get better at this spouse thing, because let's just say I'm doing not a great job at it, right? And I want to connect with my spouse more. Well, I want to connect with my spouse more daily, 3 times a week, right? And I'm going to do it at a certain time. What time is that? Let's just say it's around 6. 6 to 7 is just going to be spouse time. And I'm going to be very specific as to what I'm going to do there. That's my priority goal number 1. But why is this important to me? Well, hopefully, if you have a spouse, if you have a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, significant other, I mean, I don't know if I have to explain to you why it's important. If I do, then you might not want to be in that relationship. But look, why? I always ask why on everything that we do, because what I've noticed is when I take on something like starting up a brand new business, if I'm not passionate enough, if my why isn't strong enough, guess what ends up happening when stuff gets really hard? I end up bailing because my passion isn't there. So to me, if this right here is specific to my spouse, why is this important to me? And that's going to be an answer that depends on you. But why is this important? Write it out, and don't just take the first answer you get. You've got to dig deep into this. Why is this truly important? Does it make you feel significant? Do you love that connection? What is so important about connecting with this other person in your life? What are the key motivators? Next, what problems are you solving? So this is something I typically use, the problem. What problems are you solving for businesses? It doesn't always apply for all of the priorities or goals. In this case, it does. It could be like, well, what problem are you solving here? Are you feeling a disconnect with your spouse? Are you feeling like you just aren't connected as you used to be? Is there something going on or something in between here that's not allowing you to feel like you used to feel? What's the problem that you're solving? And then here we go. Here's where it starts getting really sticky, because now we're creating a strategy for our priority. This is the key, right? The 3 strategies. Now, what are the 3 steps that you're going to support this one goal, or in this case, one priority? What are they? Now, we've already outlined them before on the previous screen, right? So for us, it's going to be, the first one is, well, I'm going to block some time, right? That's where it would go. Block time, right? We already outlined it really quick. And number 2 is going to be specific as to what we're going to do, right? Okay, be specific as to what I'm going to do, right? Awesome. And then number 3, let me see if I remember what the heck number 3 was, because I don't even remember it. So I have to go back to my example, which is popping up on your screen, is transition correctly. So that's perfect. Now we'll go back to here we go, priorities. Good, good, good. And by the way, I'm going to dump these all into the Achievers community. So definitely be sure to jump on there as well. If we can put up a link on their page, I think there's a link for that as well. So we could definitely add that there. All right, I'm going to zoom in to the bottom here. So now that we have the transition, the bottom right there. So you have 1, 2, 3. Now here's where it gets amazing. Here's where you start accomplishing the things that you always thought you couldn't accomplish, whatever it is. because now as you start identifying the action steps behind each one, they start going into your calendar. They start now being broken down into such small steps that it doesn't feel like they're insurmountable, right? You're putting this large goal that you had into these mini steps. Right? It's almost like the book Atomic Habits, right? Which I love, by the way. If you haven't read that one, definitely read that one. All right, so let's go into the 3 action steps. The first one was block some time. So I'm going to be like, okay, block time. Now I'm going to take 3. What are the 3 action steps that I'm going to do here under block time? Well, first I'm going to add it to my calendar, right? And do I use a digital calendar? Do I use a written calendar? I use a written calendar. So I put it in there. And then after I add it to that specific time, right? What time is that? Well, let's say 6 to 6:30, 6 to 7 p.m. Now, is it going to be daily after I add it? So I put 6 to 7 p.m. Next, number 2, is it going to be daily? Is it going to be 2 times a week? Is it going to be 3 times a week? Well, when is it? Right? Okay, well, it's going to be, let's say, 3 times a week for an hour each time. Right? That's what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to plan ahead a little bit and let my spouse know, hey, right, I'm going to let you know I'm planning on this. So let's do this together when we block the time. Because if you're blocking the time and that other person can't show up, then you're going to feel like an idiot. So here we go. Melissa, thank you. Appreciate that. So that's the block time. Now we go over here and we're like, okay, let's get specific, right? What are we going to do when it comes down to this time, this hour that we have 3 times a week? Well, let's get some ideas. If you're short on ideas, this is where Google can help you out. But for me, I'd probably click number 1. I'd be like walking. Well, let's alternate here. The very first thing that I'm going to do on Mondays, I'm going to walk. Hey, Helena, thanks, Helena, appreciate that. Number 1, walk. Number 2, what else can I do? Read. My wife and I love reading, so I'd probably add there, read together, right? That's one thing that I was listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast, and he had, I don't remember the guy's name, but he plays Wolverine in X-Men. And he said he and his wife do meditations together, and they read together, and they do yoga together. And I thought, that's beautiful right there, the connection. Right. And if you come up with the guy's name, Wolverine, just type it into the chat box because I don't remember his name right now. All right. So then that's number 2, reading. Right. And number 3 can be, what about cooking together? What about cooking a family meal together, or watching a show, or doing something together? Right now, you're being a lot more purposeful. Right. And number 3 is a transition. This is going to fall on you a lot more. So first, you've got to figure out that when you're finishing something, regardless of what it is, before you show up, you have to remember that you're showing up for the person. In this case, the person that you love. Oh, Hugh Jackman, Joe, thank you. I don't know how I forgot Hugh Jackman. Thank you. Number 1 is, right, be aware. In this case, we have to be more aware of our present emotion and feeling. What are we feeling? Right now, number 2 is realize that in the transition of who we're going to show up to be for our spouse, right? Who is this? Are we going to show up with energy? Are we going to show up with lack of energy? Are we going to barely show up at all and be like, I'm here, let's read a book, right? Right? The energy matters. So remember that right there. Number 2 would be energy. Number 3, I think this is for you, but it would be like, what's the transition fully look like, right? What are some best practices that I can do instantly? Like, does music pump me up? Yeah, I'd put in right there. Number 3, music. Pump up with some music, right? So now you have the action plans, and now you can start identifying where these go in your calendar. Well, you know what? I'm going to tackle 1, and then I'm going to tackle 1A, B, and C, or A and B today. I'm going to tackle C tomorrow on my calendar, right? And that's how you start accomplishing this. And the rewards, I don't usually use rewards or consequences at all at the bottom. I did that for a few of my clients. They needed rewards and consequences. For me, the reward itself is actually achieving this. The consequence itself is not achieving it and kind of feeling like I didn't finish, right? So that's the idea behind this. Now, let me zoom out of this so you can see it fully, and we can go over it one more time. The priority, why is it important? What problem are you solving? The 3 strategies. Then you break each one of those down with 3 action steps each, and those go into your calendar. That's the idea behind it. And for those of you who just joined us, hey, I see a few of you. The idea behind it is to identify these priorities and make sure that you're identifying those things that you've always wanted to accomplish and those things that are important in your life, right? And remember, going back to the beginning, you talk about self, right? You talk about family and you talk about business. Those should always be your priorities, right? And when I talk about self, I'm throwing in spiritual in there as well, just in case you thought I forgot about that one, right? It's emotion, mental, spiritual, and physical. And the idea behind it is to always keep it in front of you, right? I have a copy of mine on my phone every month. I have it here. I have it on my computer on the side. It's always popped up. And that's what I transition into my calendar on a daily, weekly basis, right? This way I know what I'm focused on. I know that I need to do this. I know that there's a next step to this, and I know what I'm falling behind on, right? This goes perfectly along with the evening routine and the morning routine that I went through. And if you missed those, I know they're on, I think one of them's on Facebook and the other one's in this community. So very good. Now, Helena, I want to accomplish that people take me more seriously. How can I do it? Man, look, Helena, it comes down to confidence. That's a whole different process. But if you want to break down this as one of your priorities, the confidence, right? How do you work on confidence, right? That would be under self. And then you'd break down, okay, what does it even mean, right? If you want to accomplish that people take you more seriously in life, that definitely has to do with confidence. Why is it important to you? Why? Why is it even important to you? And if you want to go deeper, what problems are you solving? Then you break it down into 3 things. Well, look, typically you're not confident in some things because you lack the knowledge, you lack the experience, right? And let's break that down into the strategies you need to take to be able to accomplish this and how you can work on them on a daily basis. So this works for absolutely everything. I've tested this out for businesses, for the self, for therapy, for you name it. This has gone through the ringer. So great. You're a manager. Go on to the Achievers group. It's achievers.success.com. We'll throw it into there at the very top. I'll put in the priorities. I'll put in the examples, and then I'll put in the blueprint as well. So go ahead and go there. Now, if you have any questions, go ahead. We've got a few minutes left. Maybe 1 minute. I hit it right on time. This is the first time I finished on time. I practiced. There you go. So for those of you that joined us, thank you so much. And if you have any questions, go ahead, put them in here. I'll be there. I'll be here for another minute. If not, you can always throw them into the Achievers community. It's an app. It's free. Make sure to visit it. And if you're not part of it, I don't know why not, but go join. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much, everybody. Paige, thanks, Paige. Appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody.